Hey everybody, it's Sunday morning on Labor Day weekend, and we at Sandstead Performance and Nutrition working hard. We never take a day off, and that is the full-time coaching experience. And if you're looking for either coaching on the bike or the triathlon, or you're looking to dial in your nutrition, I'm both a licensed endurance coach and a certified nutrition. So reach out. I'm working today, as a fact. So reach out, and I'm here. Let's talk about 3 ways to nail your next FTP test. Okay, this is crucial for training because knowing your zones, that's the magic, right? Not zones that you want, or not an FTP that you want, sometimes called VFTP, vanity FTP, but an actual functional FTP. This establishes your zones. I work with athletes and I further fine tune their zones based on their individual physiology. But the FTP test is a great way to get a good ballpark picture of where you are. And I'm telling you, people, if you dial in your zones, if you know your zones, that's where the magic happens in training. That's where we're using watts to directly address certain physiological systems within the human body. And that's what this is all about. It's about stimulating certain physiological systems at certain intensities for certain durations. And that is a great way to train if you're on the performance path. I've been on this performance path. I got my first power meter back in 2012, and I've been on this performance path ever since. And I am at age 52 still hitting my all-time PR. So my 1 minute, my 10 minute, my 20 minute, my 60 minute, my 3 hour, 5 hour, 6 hour, right? I'm still able to nail my PRs even though I'm aging, because I set my ego aside, I set my vanity aside, and I train by my actual zones. Here's a great example of this. That, every spring I come out, I'm hot. That's where my FTP is at its all best. But when the summer happens, I'm terrible in the heat and the humidity. It's really the humidity that gets me, and my FTP drops down, okay? No one wants to see their FTP drop down. But in reality, your FTP goes up and down. It can go up and down within a week, but up and down through the seasons. And if we understand this and train accordingly, this is where the magic happens. So again, let's talk about 3 ways to nail your next FTP test, right? Route selection is key. We're going to talk about that. Timing is key. When should you do an FTP test? And of course, my all-time favorite, negative splits, right? That's I've done a lot of videos and spent a lot of time talking about negative splits as your best way to get in that FTP. Route selection is key. I work with a lot of athletes from big cities up and down the East Coast, in Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland. And one of the problems, particularly with the people in Maryland, as you live closer to Washington, D.C., I have a lot of clients, just on the outskirts of the Washington, D.C. area, outside the Beltway. There's traffic. There's really, it's very hard to find a route to actually do an FTP test outdoors. Many FTP tests done by my Maryland clients are actually done on a trainer, but if your path is to win big events outdoors, we need to know what you can do outdoors. And so that's key. And so you can, with time and adaptation on the trainer, you can get pretty close, but it's just not the same. So I had an athlete do a couple FTP tests on her indoor trainer, but she has a huge event coming up, so I really wanted her to get outside. So at Maryland, outside of Frederick, there is a great road called Hamburg Road, and there's affectionately a climb called Hamburg Hill. And so this is the actual climb here. It's just over 3 miles and roughly about a 6% grade. And so, when you're looking to do an FTP test and you're looking to find that route, you do want to go uphill. You want to at least go into the wind. You want to try to find something at 2% or greater. Ideally, as you get closer to the event, you're going to want to replicate the exact conditions of your event. So if you're doing a gravel race, something like that, you're going to want to find a gravel climb or a gravel section in which you can do that, your watts, because, on gravel, chances are very good you're going to lose watts. So for me, for instance, I live in the mountains of Virginia, so I have great gravel climbs and I have great road climbs everywhere, of different grades. So I can pretty much test on whatever is coming at me in a future event. But on gravel roads, there's slippage, there's all kinds of stuff. I'm going to lose, for me, about 10 watts just on a gravel climb. So if my FTP's 320 come the spring, it's going to be about 310 on a gravel climb. Similarly, you're going to want to test for your event. So if you're a dedicated TT person, you're going to need to know what your TT is in that position, your TT FTP. That's crucial because, one of the shocking things, I work with a lot of juniors. And so the juniors, they want to do a TT. They get, a bike from their dad's friend that's been sitting in the garage for 10 years. It's a TT bike, and they're really super disappointed when they are not even able to come close to their FTP during an event, a TT event, right? So, when you bend over in that position, that TT position, it affects everybody differently, but it will take watts off. That bent over position, it cramps up your cardiovascular system, drives up your cardiovascular system, lowers your watts because you are in a new position, you are using new muscles. So for my TT specialist, it's crucial to get an FTP test in that position. So remember, we want the F in FTP is functional. We want a functional FTP. We want to know what you can do event day. We want to know where your zones are, not based on vanity or what you want them, but we want a real world functional example of what you can do. Okay, so route selection is key in all of that. So had an athlete, she just did this weekend. She's training for a big event, and I told her, I said, hey, you're doing stuff indoors. We need to get you outdoors. We need to see a real world example of what you can do. Let's jump on a climb. There's no traffic, there's no stop signs, all that great stuff, and so you can do it. And so she lives in that area. So she drove over and bam, she nailed it. Now, the Hamburg climb, it's on STRAVA, and I'll put these links in the show notes below. But on STRAVA, it's called Hamburg Road. For those of you Gran Fondo National Series, it is the first event. And this Hamburg Road on STRAVA starts actually in the park, but the actual event for the Gran Fondo National Series adds that section right there. And depending on who you are and depending how strong you are, you might need to add that extra section, okay? So, if you have an FTP of 300, it might only take you 15 minutes to do Hamburg Hill. But we're looking, depending on, what the data says for this particular athlete on this particular day, I wanted her 20-minute best effort. But I have other athletes, I might only want to see their 15-minute best effort. I have other athletes, I might want to see their 38-minute best effort, okay? I coach by a philosophy called normalized residuals when setting zones, and it's a far more accurate way to find zones than just doing a 20-minute test with a 5-minute blowout before, or a ramp test, or 2 8-minute tests, something like that. So I'm very specific in how I want athletes to do and, time that I want them to nail for their FTP test. Now, this particular athlete, She got a great warm-up, so she parks in Frederick. She goes up here, gets a great warm-up, and then, you know, right when you get to this turn, this is, I believe, right around Yellow Springs. This is a great place to start your FTP right here. This will give you plenty of ramp room so that you're not going to run out of room. Now, you are going to be going, so it starts about right here at mile 8, so that's a great 8-mile warm-up. Then, boom, hit it. Jam a little bit here, and then just really settle in on this climb and nail it. Now, whenever I look at a new test from an athlete, I always look at their comments first, especially at FTP. Like, it's literally, I don't even look at their data. I want to jump in there and see what they said and how they felt. And so she left some great comments here. Hamburg Hill, this was her first time doing it. Hamburg Hill, hands down, one of my favorite climbs. There's no doubt I will be back here. Super excited about this route. I felt great and strong climbing. I might have been able to push a bit more. I find myself preserving a little in the beginning because I was not sure what to expect. After I got to the top, I was all smiles and loving the scenery. Maybe FTPs are not all that bad as long as you have the right route. So that was an absolute perfect comment. And I had several other comments with her exchanges since then. But this was her great first comment, right? So this was her first FTP test done outdoors, done on an actual route. So when you're doing the FTP test, route selection is key, okay? Now, negative splits. First, there's route selection. 2, there's timing. 3, there's pacing by negative splits. So let's look at that timing, for example. So the timing of her FTP test was, I like to test for those performance athletes in performance mode, especially as they're heading towards their events. I really want to know where their FTP is. And so I like to test. And so every 4 weeks. And so she's had 3 nice weeks of build. And then at the end of a rest week, that's when she nailed her FTP. Sometimes, but it all depends, right? You know, in that rest week, I'll even say, hey, wherever you feel great, do your FTP test, right? So there's nothing in the data that says you have to wait until Saturday or Friday or Sunday to do your FTP test on a rest week. If you feel great on Tuesday, then nail it. What I like to do for when I test, I'll actually, especially if I don't know where I'm at. So say it's been, a little bit longer than 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I'll go out and do a warm up, like 10-minute, somewhere around my FTP to see how I feel. And if I'm feeling great in that 10-minute effort and I'm hitting good numbers, I'll just rock it out. I'll just keep going with my test. If not, if I've misjudged some things, then I can come back and reset for later in the week. But I like to give myself kind of 2 times to do an FTP test. Now, 1, route selection. 2, timing, get it in the right place. 3, negative splits. Now, negative splits, I've done a lot of videos on this. This is simply start your effort slower, weaker, and end stronger, faster. The old pros used to call this grabbing an extra gear at the top of the climb, right? You didn't want to blow yourself up at the bottom of the climb and be dead at the top. You wanted to work yourself into a climb and then have enough energy at the top to able to grab another gear. This is the concept of negative splits. And basically, it's if you go out too hard, you're going to build up all these waste products, and then you got to carry those waste products, which are fatiguing, throughout the rest of your effort. So you go out way too hard and you die 1,000 deaths to cross that finish line. But if you do negative splits, you're in there, you're going hard, but you're going slower, you're going easier than what you know you can, and then leave it all out on the end. And then, if you have room and you're feeling good, I always say just keep going until you die. I will grab the data that I'm looking for. So how do you do negative splits? You set up your lap timer. You set up a screen that looks just like this. This is all you need, right? You need your lap time, 3-second power, heart rate, cadence, lap power, average lap power. So these are the screens that I use and train by for probably 98% of everything that I do, even if I'm rocking out like a 6-hour gravel event race, something like that. I pretty much just look at these screens and I'm using that lap button. If I have a big climb coming up, so if, say for instance, we have this race around here, it's basically 5 miles up, 5 miles down, 5 miles up, 5 miles down. You do that for 65 miles. And so at the base of every climb, I have my strategy. I hit my lap button at the base of every climb and then just pace that mountain within my watts and then go down the other side, hit that lap button again. But the lap button is your friend and you need to use it. So once again, let's look at this. It's lap time, 3-second power, heart rate, cadence, lap power. I love to look at my heart rate. I love to look and understand my cadence, okay? So how did she do on the negative splits? Boom, she nailed it. Look at this, right? So this is just perfect. This is the 20-minute effort that she was supposed to do. This is her power trend line. So you can see she starts slower, weaker, and ends ultimately stronger and faster. And here's what's great about this particular athlete is that this is her first test attempt on this climb. And she will only get better at outdoor testing. Part of having a great FTP is setting those zones correctly, but you do have to game the test a little bit. You do have to understand the FTP testing protocol. You do have to understand your own physiology, and you have to understand how to take an FTP test. And as you gain experience in FTP testing, then you're only going to nail that data correctly, and we're going to have a much better idea of how you can race. So she for instance, she's doing several different types of events, sprints, crits, road race, and TT. So she's doing 4 big things. And this will give us ideas with all the other testing that I throw in there, because I test her 1 minute or 5 minute, her sprint, all that great stuff. This is going to give us a great idea, physiologically speaking, of who she is as an athlete. If you have any questions about FTP testing and you want to rock out your best FTP test ever, reach out today. Would love to talk to you.